It's 3:47 a.m. You're lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Everyone else is asleep, the house is silent, and your mind is screaming. You know this feeling. We all do. That moment when night transforms your thoughts into something darker, something you can't control. Tonight, we're diving into the psychology of 3 a.m., why this specific hour turns your mind against you, and what I discovered will make you understand why you fear the night. Because 3 a.m. isn't just a time, it's a psychological phenomenon, and your brain knows it. Let me start with a question. Why does everything feel worse at 3 a.m.? Your problems, your fears, your regrets. During the day, that embarrassing moment from 5 years ago is just a memory. At 3 a.m., it's a visceral, crushing weight on your chest. During the day, your future seems manageable. At 3 a.m., it's an endless void of uncertainty and failure. This isn't random. This isn't just being tired. There's actual science behind why the human mind becomes its own torture chamber when the world goes dark. Studies on circadian rhythms reveal something disturbing. Between 2 and 4 a.m., your body reaches its lowest point. Core temperature drops, blood pressure bottoms out. But here's what's critical. Your brain's prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thought and emotional regulation, experiences reduced activity. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the fear center, remains fully active, sometimes even hyperactive. What does this mean? Your ability to control negative thoughts plummets while your capacity to generate fear spikes. You're literally neurologically vulnerable at 3 a.m. But it goes deeper than neuroscience. There's a reason cultures across history called 3 a.m. the devil's hour. The hour when spirits walk, when demons whisper, when the veil between worlds grows thin. Ancient superstition? Maybe. But maybe they were describing something real, something psychological. Because at 3 a.m. the boundaries in your own mind grow thin. Between thought and obsession, between worry and panic, between memory and nightmare. Psychologists studying nocturnal anxiety discovered a pattern. Patients with anxiety disorders report that their symptoms intensify dramatically during early morning hours. Not just slightly worse, exponentially worse. One subject described it as, "My daytime anxieties are annoying whispers, but at 3 a.m. they're deafening screams." Another said, "It's like my mind saves every terrible thought for the middle of the night." And here's the disturbing part. Even people without diagnosed anxiety disorders experience this. You experience this. The amplification of negative thought patterns in darkness and silence. It's universal, which means it's hardwired into human psychology. Think about the last time you woke up at 3 a.m. What were you thinking about? I can almost guarantee it wasn't pleasant. You weren't lying there pondering beautiful memories or exciting future plans. You were thinking about everything wrong in your life, every mistake you've made, every relationship you've damaged, every opportunity you've lost. Your mind, in the darkness, becomes a highlight reel of your failures. Why? Because your brain, without the regulatory control of your prefrontal cortex, defaults to threat assessment. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism gone haywire in modern life. Let me explain what's actually happening in your brain at 3 a.m. During deep sleep, your mind processes the day's events, filing memories, reconciling emotions. But when you wake during this process, especially in that early morning window, you interrupt something critical. Your brain is mid-processing, sorting through unresolved emotional content. Fears you suppress during the day, anxieties you push down to function. At 3 a.m. they're all surfacing raw and unfiltered. And without your full cognitive control, you can't rationalize them away. You can't talk yourself down, they just consume you. Neuroscientists using brain imaging on subjects woken at different times found that those woken between 2 and 4 a.m. showed heightened activity in the limbic system, the emotional center, while showing decreased activity in the frontal lobes. What does this look like experientially? Catastrophic thinking, that's the technical term. Every small problem becomes an insurmountable crisis. You forgot to reply to an email? At 3 a.m. that becomes, "I'm going to lose my job, I'll be homeless, my life is over." You had a minor argument with someone? At 3 a.m. that becomes, "They hate me, everyone hates me, I'm fundamentally unlovable." The rational part of your brain knows these thoughts are distorted. But at 3 a.m., that rational part is offline. There's another element that makes 3 a.m. particularly sinister. Silence. Absolute silence. During the day, ambient noise, traffic, voices, music, the hum of life, provides constant sensory input. Your brain processes external stimuli. At 3 a.m. that input disappears, the world goes silent. And in that silence, your internal voice becomes deafening. Every thought echoes, amplifies, loops, Researchers studying sensory deprivation found that even brief periods of silence cause the brain to generate its own stimulation, usually in the form of intrusive thoughts. At 3 a.m., you're in a natural state of partial sensory deprivation. Darkness limits visual input. Silence eliminates auditory input. Your brain, desperate for something to process, turns inward. And what it finds there in the darkness of your own mind is rarely comforting. I want you to imagine something. You're lying in bed at 3 a.m. You woke up from a dream you can't quite remember, but the feeling lingers. Unease, dread. You check your phone, 3:17 a.m. You put it down, close your eyes, try to sleep, but your mind starts. First, it's something small. Did I lock the front door? You're pretty sure you did, but now you're not certain. The thought spirals. What if someone breaks in? What if they're already inside? You listen to the silence. Was that a sound? Probably just the house settling, but maybe not. Your heart rate increases. Now you're fully awake. And once one thought starts, they all flood in. That conversation from earlier today, did you say something wrong? You replay it, over and over. Each time your words sound worse, more awkward, more offensive. They probably think you're an idiot. They're probably talking about you right now. Actually, no, it's 3 a.m. They're asleep. Normal people are asleep. Why aren't you asleep? What's wrong with you? Why can't you just turn your brain off like everyone else? You're broken. You've always been broken. This is why you're alone. This is why you'll always be alone. See how quickly it escalates? From did I lock the door to I'm fundamentally broken in less than 3 minutes. That's the 3 a.m. spiral. Psychologists call it rumination, repetitive, intrusive, negative thinking. But at 3 a.m. it's not just rumination, it's cognitive quicksand. The harder you try to escape the thoughts, the deeper you sink. You try to think about something else, anything else. But your mind drags you back, to the fear, to the shame, to the endless what-ifs that have no answers. There's a reason sleep deprivation is used as torture. Not just because exhaustion breaks you down physically, but because the psychological state it induces, that late-night, early-morning liminal space where reality distorts, is genuinely tormenting. Prisoners subjected to sleep deprivation report the same symptoms: paranoia, intrusive thoughts, emotional volatility, hallucinations in severe cases. You're not being tortured, but your brain at 3 a.m. is experiencing a mild version of the same neurological dysfunction. Your perception narrows, your thoughts darken, reality becomes fluid. Now let me tell you about the 3 a.m. phenomenon that disturbs me most: false awakening loops. You've probably experienced this. You're lying in bed at 3 a.m., can't sleep, mind racing. Finally, exhaustion takes over. You drift off. Then you wake up, or think you wake up. You're still in bed, same room, same darkness, but something feels wrong, off. You try to move, but your body won't respond. You try to scream, but no sound comes out. You see something in the corner of the room, a shadow, a figure, moving closer. You're paralyzed, terrified. And then, you actually wake up, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. That was sleep paralysis combined with a hypnagogic hallucination. And it almost always happens in that 2-4 a.m. window. Here's why. During REM sleep, your body is naturally paralyzed to prevent you from acting out dreams. If you wake up before that paralysis wears off, which commonly happens during disrupted early morning sleep, you experience conscious awareness while physically immobile. Your brain, in a panic response, generates a threat to explain the sensation. The shadow figure, the presence in the room, the feeling of being watched. It's your mind creating a narrative for a neurological glitch. But knowing that doesn't make it less terrifying when it happens at 3 a.m. When darkness and silence already have you on edge. When your rational defenses are compromised. Studies on sleep architecture show that we cycle through different sleep stages throughout the night. But the 3-4 a.m. period is when we enter our longest and deepest REM cycle. Rapid eye movement sleep, is when we dream most intensely. It's also when emotional processing occurs. Your brain literally replays traumatic or stressful experiences, attempting to integrate them into long-term memory. If you wake during this process, you're surfacing from the psychological deep end. Your mind is mid-nightmare, mid-fear processing, mid-emotional excavation. No wonder everything feels apocalyptic. But here's what makes 3 a.m. truly insidious. It's self-perpetuating. You have one bad night. You wake at 3 a.m., thoughts spiral, you feel terrible. The next night, as bedtime approaches, you worry. What if I wake up again? What if I can't sleep? The anxiety about not sleeping makes it harder to sleep. And when you do inevitably wake at 3 a.m., because you've primed your brain to, the cycle confirms itself. See, it's happening again. There is something wrong with me. This is called conditioned arousal. Your brain learns to associate 3 a.m. with anxiety and wakefulness. Over time, it becomes automatic. You don't even need a trigger anymore. Your body just wakes up at that time, expecting the spiral and delivering it. I spoke with a sleep psychologist who specializes in nocturnal anxiety disorders. She told me something chilling. Most people don't realize that chronic 3 a.m. waking changes brain structure over time. The neural pathways associated with nighttime rumination become stronger, more automatic. It's like your brain is digging a groove, and each episode deepens it. Eventually, the thoughts at 3 a.m. aren't even about real problems anymore. They're just the ritual your brain performs, the torture it inflicts on itself because that's what it's learned to do. Think about that. Your mind, through repetition, training itself to suffer. Not because there's an external threat, but because the pattern itself becomes the threat. There's a philosophical dimension to the 3 a.m. experience that we need to explore. Because it's not just neuroscience, it's existential. At 3 a.m., when you're alone with your thoughts in the darkness, you confront something fundamental. The constructed nature of your daily reality. During the day, you're distracted. Work, socializing, entertainment, responsibilities. These things occupy your mind, give you purpose, create the illusion of control. At 3 a.m., all of that evaporates, the distractions are gone, the purpose is absent. The control was always an illusion, and you're left with the raw, unfiltered truth of existence. You're a consciousness trapped in a body, hurtling through time toward inevitable death. And most of what you worry about during the day is completely meaningless. That's the real terror of 3 a.m., not the thoughts themselves, but what they represent. The collapse of the comforting narratives you tell yourself to function. The exposure of the void beneath the surface of normal life. Philosophers have a term for this: existential dread. The overwhelming awareness of your own mortality and the apparent meaninglessness of existence. During the day you can suppress it. At 3 a.m. it surges, because darkness and silence strip away the defenses, the distractions, the denial. Writers and artists have long been obsessed with this hour. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, "In a real dark night of the soul, it is always 3 o'clock in the morning, day after day." He wasn't being poetic. He was describing a psychological state. That feeling of being trapped in permanent 3 a.m., where every thought is poisoned, every memory is tainted, every future scenario ends in failure or death. Some people live their entire lives in this state. Chronic anxiety and depression are, in many ways, the experience of perpetual 3 a.m. consciousness, where the rational, hopeful parts of the mind are permanently suppressed, and the fearful, catastrophic parts reign supreme. But even if you don't suffer from clinical conditions, you've still experienced the 3 a.m. phenomenon. And here's what's disturbing. It reveals something true about your mind. All those dark thoughts, they're always there. Always. During the day, your brain suppresses them, filters them, rationalizes them away. But at 3 a.m., the filter breaks, and you see what's really happening beneath the surface of your consciousness. The fears you carry constantly, the self-doubt that never actually goes away, the existential terror you've learned to ignore. At 3 a.m., you're not experiencing something abnormal. You're experiencing reality without the comforting delusions. Does that mean that 3 a.m. thoughts are more true than daytime thoughts? Not necessarily, but they're certainly more honest, more visceral, unedited by social conditioning and rational suppression. At 3 a.m., you're meeting your shadow self, the part of you that doubts everything, fears everything, expects the worst. Jung called this the personal shadow, the repository of everything you deny about yourself during waking life. At 3 a.m., the shadow speaks, and you have no choice but to listen. So what do we do with this? How do we survive 3 a.m.? The answer isn't what you think. You can't fight it. Trying to suppress the thoughts, to force yourself back to sleep, to rationalize your way out. These strategies fail because they're based on control. And at 3 a.m. you don't have control. Your prefrontal cortex is offline. Your amygdala is in charge. Trying to logic your way through an emotional storm with compromised cognitive function is like trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. It just prolongs the suffering. Sleep researchers suggest something counterintuitive: acceptance. When you wake at 3 a.m. and the thoughts start, don't fight them. Acknowledge them.
Yes, I'm anxious. Yes, I'm thinking about everything wrong in my life. Yes, this is uncomfortable.
Because resistance amplifies the experience. The more you tell yourself, "I shouldn't be feeling this way," the more distressed you become about being distressed. It's a second layer of suffering on top of the original suffering. At 3 a.m., trying to control your thoughts is like trying to control a river with your hands. The water flows regardless. You just end up exhausted. But here's the deeper truth about 3 a.m. It serves a purpose. Not a pleasant purpose, but a necessary one. Those dark thoughts, that confrontation with your fears and failures and mortality, they're your mind attempting to process unresolved psychological content. During the day, you suppress, you avoid, you distract. At 3 a.m., your brain says, "No more avoidance. We're dealing with this now." It's not pleasant, but it's honest work. Your psyche is trying to integrate the parts of your experience you've been denying. Indigenous cultures had rituals around the dark hours, vision quests, midnight meditations, solo journeys into the wilderness. They understood something modern society has forgotten, that confronting the darkness, external and internal, is essential for psychological wholeness. At 3 a.m., whether you want it or not, you're on a vision quest, into the darkness of your own mind. And what you find there, however disturbing, is part of you. Denying it doesn't make it disappear. It just makes it louder the next time you're alone in the dark. There's also a strange gift hidden in the 3 a.m. experience. Clarity. Not pleasant clarity, but truth. Some people make their most important life decisions at 3 a.m. because when all the social conditioning falls away, when all the shoulds and supposed tos evaporate, you're left with what you actually feel, what you actually want, what you're actually afraid of. The answer to questions you've been avoiding becomes suddenly painfully obvious. Do I really want this job? Is this relationship actually fulfilling? Am I living the life I want, or the life I think I should want? At 3 a.m., the truth emerges, raw and unfiltered. It's now 4:37 a.m. in this hypothetical scenario. You've been awake for almost an hour. The thoughts have cycled through. Fear, regret, existential dread. And now, something shifts. The thoughts start to quiet. Not because you've solved anything, not because your problems have disappeared, but because your mind is exhausted. The storm passes, not because it's over, but because storms always pass. You've survived another 3 a.m. episode. You always do. Here's the final truth about 3 a.m. It will happen again. You will wake up in darkness. Your thoughts will spiral. Your fears will amplify. This is part of being human. Part of having a complex consciousness that processes emotions, fears mortality, and struggles with meaning. 3 a.m. isn't a disorder. It's not a malfunction, it's a feature of the human mind. An uncomfortable, terrifying feature, but a feature nonetheless. The question isn't how to eliminate 3 a.m. You can't. The question is, what do you do with what it reveals? Do you dismiss the dark thoughts as meaningless neurological noise? Or do you listen to what your shadow self is trying to tell you? Maybe somewhere between the catastrophic thinking and the existential dread, there's actually information about what you fear, what you value, what you need to change. Maybe 3 a.m. is terrible precisely because it's forcing you to see something you've been avoiding. The night always turns thoughts into nightmares, that's its nature. But nightmares, however disturbing, are still just dreams. They feel real in the moment, overwhelming, permanent. But when morning comes, and it always comes, they lose their power. The thoughts that consumed you at 3 a.m. seem manageable at 8 a.m. Not because they weren't real, but because you've regained the parts of your mind that can cope with them. Until the next time you wake at 3 a.m., and the cycle begins again. Because that's what minds do in darkness. They spiral, they fear, they confront what was hidden. And there's a strange comfort in knowing we all do this. That every person lying awake at 3 a.m. convinced they're uniquely broken is experiencing the exact same neurological phenomenon. The same ancient fear, the same existential weight. You're not alone in the darkness. We're all there, waiting for dawn. If this resonated with you, there's more darkness to explore. The human mind has infinite depths, and most of them are terrifying. Leave your 3 a.m. thoughts below, if you dare.